So you made some shrewd waiver wire moves, and you're looking ahead to who you can pick up this coming week, but who should you drop to clear room, and who should you start to really worry about? This time, I'm going to talk about some young players who are struggling so far. I like to give young players the benefit of the doubt, especially early in the season, but we're nearly a month into the year, and at this point, maybe you should consider parting ways. Let's start off in Detroit. Spencer Torkelson, the guy who was the former #1 overall draft pick and top prospect in baseball. It seems like that's hard to believe because of the way he's performed so far. Hasn't proven that he can really hit major league pitching, to be honest. Last year, struggled to a .203 batting average, and this year, it's really not much different, hitting .229. The strikeout rate has improved a little bit, but the walk rate hasn't. In fact, it's gotten worse also. Now, I dug into the numbers a little bit to see what is going on. Is it certain types of pitches that he's having trouble with? Is it a launch angle thing? What is it? And really, he's just flat out missing a lot of opportunities, not even hitting the fastball very well, which is something that is concerning because a lot of times, even these sluggers can get away with turning on a fastball, even if they can't get to sliders or some off-speed stuff that fools them, at least they can sit fastball early or late in the count, but he's not even doing that. Hitting .213 versus fastballs this year, .223 last year. It seems to me he's just having trouble catching up with major league heat. His line drive rate is actually pretty good, and he's not somebody who really needs to switch up anything in the launch angle. His contact is fine when he makes contact, but here's the problem. The contact just isn't coming enough. He's swinging early and often in the count. He's getting himself in bad positions. He needs to have a little bit more patience, even though you say, well, the strikeout rate isn't terrible. That's not really all it is. It's not just about strikeouts. It's putting yourself in bad positions, bad counts, pitch recognition. So the bottom line is, at this point, I don't see any signs of recovery, at least not anytime soon. He's not helping you out by getting you power to compensate for the terrible batting average. I don't think there's any reason he really needs to be rostered in fantasy at this point. And that brings me to his teammate, Riley Green, another top prospect in Detroit, and this is a guy I was pretty high on in the preseason. You know, I don't really have Torkelson anywhere in fantasy, to be honest, maybe one or two places just to take a shot, but I wasn't assuming he'd be my starting first baseman. Riley Green, I thought, is somebody who could stay in my lineup, and unlike Torkelson, he can help by giving you speed, and he's hitting leadoff for the most part in Detroit, so better chance to score some runs. He just needs to get on base. Well, he was doing that early in the season. In fact, the first week got off to a really nice start. He was hitting for average, stole a couple of bags. He has 2 home runs, 2 steals, and 6 RBIs. But this past week was rough for him. He's seen his average plummet down to .226. That is because he's striking out 12 times just in the past week alone. His strikeout rate has jumped up to one of the worst in the majors all of a sudden at 35%. Unlike Torkelson, he's somebody who does need to switch things up in terms of launch angle. He's just hitting too many ground balls. I know he's got some speed, but still, this should be a line drive hitter. Line drives are the key to base hits, and this is somebody who can do that, just not happening for him right now. It's either on the ground or he's just missing completely. What's weird is, like Torkelson, he's also having trouble with the fastball. I don't know what it is in Detroit, but these young players really need to start developing. You know, they got a new hitting coach this year. They're trying to adjust things, even the fence at Comerica Park, trying to help these young prospects out because they're going to be the key to this team's offense for years to come. But I will say this with Green, I am holding out hope. I'm not parting ways with him yet because I think he can make the necessary adjustments. Second of all, I'm kind of chalking this up to just a bad week because, again, he was looking good to begin with. Every player is going to go through slumps. It's just magnified when it's so early and we have such a small sample size. The top prospect in baseball this year is Gunnar Henderson of the Baltimore Orioles, starting third baseman on a regular basis. Everyone's going crazy about him and thought he was a sure thing. You've seen what he did last year. Looks pretty good in his limited time. I mean, how could this guy miss? Well, he's missing quite a bit so far. 34.2% strikeout rate, just slightly better than Riley Green. And this has been constant all season since the very beginning. What's weird about Henderson is he's somehow managed to post one of the highest strikeout rates and one of the highest and best walk rates in the majors simultaneously. And the reason is still the same. He's just not swinging the bat, period. Don't know why. The major league swing rate average is 47%. He's swinging at a 35.8% clip. And when you look at just pitches in the zone, these are strikes that should be for the most part, at least attempted at a swing. Major league average 66%. He's only swinging 53% of the time when the ball is down the middle. Probably the only good thing I could say so far with Henderson is at least his average exit velocity and max EV are decent. But still, the expected batting average, even on the balls where he is at least making an effort to swing, not good. It's 189, and so he's really struggling to find his groove at the plate. Can things turn around? Of course. This Baltimore team looking pretty promising so far. I think he'll figure it out, but at this point, there's no way you can just keep him in your lineup. If you're in a points league and you're at least getting something with the walks, maybe you can talk yourself into it. He's going to have some sort of a mental shift here where he decides he's going to be at least a little bit more aggressive. On the pitching side, let's look at another Oriole, Grayson Rodriguez. Rodriguez, weren't sure when he would come up. It didn't take long, an injury, and then the first week of the season, they're calling him up, and he has stuck. This guy has nothing to prove in the minors. He's got the arm talent, got the opportunity. So let's see what he does with it. So far, not great, Bob. A 5.12 ERA and a 1.60 whip. But as I always advise with pitchers, especially starting pitchers so early in the season, you have to really dissect start by start what is going on here. You might remember his debut was actually great. He had a kind of a rocky first inning, settled down, only gave up 2 runs in 5 innings, but then hit hard by the Oakland A's, no less, and hit hard again by the White Sox. But his last turn in the rotation, he blanked the Tigers over 5 innings. No runs, only walked 3 and struck out 6. Now you might say, well, you just talked about how bad the Tigers' offense has been. Maybe it was just the matchup. Okay, that might be part of it, but still, what we see, 2 good starts, 2 bad starts. This is going to happen. A young pitcher, there are going to be some ups and downs, and you're not always going to predict when it's going to be. What I like, though, is that the strikeout to walk ratio is 25-10. He's not putting a ton of batters on, and he is generating whiffs. There's no reason to doubt the talent here. I'm going to give him a pass on those couple of bad outings. I am going to say, yes, you should expect that there will be some more in the future, but those will be few and far between. I think for the most part, he's a guy that if you pick your spots wisely, and I'm not saying I know when those spots are, and we don't always know when these bad starts are going to be, but I think for the most part, he's going to be a guy who can help you out and you're glad you have on your roster. Then there's Brady Singer. Singer in Kansas City. Now he's been in the majors now a couple of years, still fairly young at 26, but by this point, we should know what we're getting with him. Well, we thought we were getting a pitcher who had now developed into a solid mid-rotation arm and somebody who could be dependable in fantasy and not really get lit up. He pitched to a 3.23 ERA last year, had a really strong second half. So, of course, what does he do coming into this season? He gets obliterated and just totally destroys your ERA. Currently has a 6.67 ERA and striking out less than a batter per inning. If you look at the StatCast numbers, really some of the worst in the league across the board. Getting hit often, getting hit really hard. And that's a bad sign for a guy who doesn't have elite velocity to begin with, and he really has to make sure that he does his best to keep hitters off balance. He's not doing that at all. Now, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with Singer, but I will note something that is similar to what I just said with Grayson Rodriguez. There's kind of a sandwich thing going on here where he's got a good start, some really bad starts, and then another good start. If you saw his opening day start, he was great. Only 1 run, 2 hits in 5 innings. And if you had him in your lineup at any point over those next 3 starts, I feel bad for you. Man, he just got decimated. He gave up 18 runs over his 16 innings pitched in those next 3 starts combined. But then last night, he goes out and he pitches 6 solid innings, gives up 1 run on 5 hits, doesn't walk a single batter. So which Singer are we going to get going forward, and what is going on with him? Well, if you believe in the law of regression, that line drive rate should come down right now about 30%. Usually he's been sitting around 24%, closer to the major league average. So maybe things will just even out. His control doesn't seem to be terrible. It's not like he's walking a ton of guys. He's just not quite locating it in the best spots. He's leaving a few too many meatballs out there to be hit. I already mentioned this is somebody who is not going to blow away hitters, so he really has to be sharp in where he puts his pitches in order to not get hit. Let's take it easy and let's see what happens over the next few weeks. If he does settle in and gets in a groove, he could put together a string of quality starts like he did late last year. I'm not going to say he should be rostered right now. There's nothing he's done really to deserve that. but I'm not going to be full-blown panic just based on his ratios. And then I want to bring up Camilo Doval in San Francisco, who is the closer. Yes, he is still the closer. Some people who drafted him early as their top closer are really disappointed because he's only got 2 saves so far. San Francisco usually one of those teams that wins in close games, and so you have to wonder, is there something going on here? Is this team going to a committee? Because that's basically how they approach everything on the field, the rotation, closer. They're always flipping guys in and out. Well, the answer is no, nothing to worry about. It just so happens that the Giants have not done that, not won a lot of close games so far early this season. They only have 4 saves total on the year, and so it's not like these opportunities are really falling to somebody else, not like he's not trusting Doval. It's nothing wrong with him the way he's pitching. In fact, he's pitching even better than last year. It's just early, and in fact, if you look, there's some teams like the Chicago Cubs only have 2 saves total so far this year. Several teams only got 3 or 4 saves. So it's nothing with Doval. Don't worry. He's still going to be fine. Ezequiel Tovar, shortstop for the Colorado Rockies, not really rostered in a ton of fantasy leagues, but I know some NL only, some deeper leagues, like keeper and dynasty leagues do have him. And a lot of people thought he was going to be one of the more promising rookies this year, even in fantasy, because he's got the speed. He can hit for average. At least he could in the minors. He's been given the shortstop job, and he's held it all throughout the season, but man, that grip might start to loosen because he's just not hacking at the plate. He's hitting 187, and I think the worst part of it is he hasn't stolen a single base. For someone who already has kind of limited power, I mean, his value is going to be tied to those 2 things, which is batting average and speed, and he's struggling in both categories. The Rockies are not a team that really just runs that much. He's kind of fortunate that he still is the everyday shortstop because they really don't have anybody else to put in his place. Even another young guy who's playing in the middle infield now, Alan Trejo, he's not hitting either. But at this point, the Rockies are committed. I mean, let these young guys learn on the job, but don't sacrifice your batting average in fantasy. I don't think he needs to be rostered in any way. And now relegated to the very bottom spot in the batting order. There's basically 0 value here, at least this year. If you're parting ways with any of these young players, who are you going to pick up in their place? Well, check out my latest waiver wire video for some ideas.